The New York Islanders host the Seattle Kraken tonight at UBS Arena. We have a special crossover episode of Locked On Islanders and Locked On Kraken with Erica Ayala, the host of Locked On Kraken. We've got that and a lot more coming up on today's Locked On Islanders podcast.
You're Locked On Islanders, your daily podcast on the New York Islanders. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Hey, what do you say, Seattle hockey fans and New York Islanders fans? We have a crossover episode, or as I, Erica Ayala, host of Locked On Kraken, like to say, a squad cast. I am joined by the amazing Gil Martin, your host of Locked On Islanders and Locked On NHL, where, Gil, you and I are usually talking. And so it's so wild for me to now be in the driver's seat for this episode.
Hey, go for it. Let's have some fun with this, and hopefully we'll have a good game on Thursday night.
Indeed, and alluded to this, but both of our teams on the road. Obviously, the Seattle Kraken will be visiting the Islanders, but the Islanders just coming back from a trip over the border and an overtime game, Gil. Let's first just start there before we get into the first 20 or so games of our respective seasons. But what were some of the takeaways from that game against Montreal, and how do you think this will fuel the Islanders team, coming into the game against the Kraken?
Well, unfortunately for the Islanders, a lot of the same problems reared their ugly heads, and they had 2 penalty kills. They gave up 1 goal, so the penalty kill near the bottom of the league. They had more than 30 shots on goal, but only 1 went in, so finishing has been a problem for this team all year long, especially with the injuries to Matthew Barzal and Anthony Duclair. So that's 2/3 of your top line on the shelf right now. And overtime has been a problem. The Islanders, not the fastest team in the league, 3-on-3 with all that open ice. You need speedy guys. Barzal is really their only excellent skater on the roster. He's not available. They struggle 3-on-3. So you end up with the proverbial loser point and the overtime loss in Montreal.
Yeah, definitely a tough one. I mean, I will say, in being able to just see some of the highlights from that game, what definitely seemed like death taxes New York Islanders was also Sorokin, at least giving this team, an opportunity and a chance to win games. We certainly, as the Seattle Kraken, have been victim to amazing goal play by Sorokin. But I want to again talk about the first 20 games here. So let's talk about it. What has goaltending looked like for the Islanders, and then we'll talk about that a little bit on the Kraken side as well.
The goaltending for the Islanders has been solid. I mean, I can't say it's been spectacular. The big concern, we learned late in the offseason, right before training camp was ready to open, that Ilya Sorokin had back surgery over the offseason, and he wasn't going to be ready to start training camp. So all of a sudden, worst case scenarios run through your mind. Backs, as we know, somebody's got it. Almost everyone has at least one friend or relative who has a bad back. It's just like the nature of mankind, I guess. And we know backs are tricky. So the Islanders didn't say much about the extent of the surgery, what the surgery was. Lou Lamoriello tends to be very tight-lipped about these things. The fact that Ilya Sorokin came out, was on the roster opening night, despite not playing in any preseason games, and has played really, really well for the most part throughout this season, has been a big relief for the New York Islanders. Semyon Varlamov, it's a tough job. He only gets to play maybe once a week, sort of every 3rd game. He's been solid more often than not as the backup. Goaltending is the least of the New York Islanders' problems right now. How about for you in Seattle?
It's this very similar story with regard to goaltending not being the biggest problem. It's not at the top of the whiteboard for us, I would say. And Joey Daccord has been a player that you and I have talked about throughout the seasons, and he is effectively our starting goaltender. There was a lot of chatter. You mentioned what the preseason chatter was and going into training camp about Sorokin, but we were hearing that under Dan Bilesmeyer, new head coach that was coming from Coachella Valley, our AHL system, who's worked with Joey Daccord when he was an assistant coach, when we were, as I like to say, co-parenting the Charlotte Checkers, the AHL affiliate of the Florida Panthers. Excuse me. So Bilesma had experience with Joey Daccord, saw his comeuppance, if you will, in the NHL, but the expectation that we had another year, we were told that there was going to be more of an equitable split in net. That has not happened. And unfortunately, Philip Grubauer, he had like a gnarly home incident where his face was all kind of messed up. We didn't really get too many details there. But again, he's had kind of some of these fluke injuries, but then also he just hasn't been able to get goal support. I will say in one of our most recent games, though, against one of our Pacific Division opponents, it was kind of clear that Philip Grubauer, we might be seeing the end of the Philip Grubauer era in Seattle. I don't think that will come this season, but Joey Daccord is great. I do wonder whether it's in the off season or maybe another year or two. But I just think that on the side of goaltending, big picture, there's still some questions that need to be answered. Unfortunately, that's something that, Gil, I feel like we say every year. But overall, when you look at the record, 11-6-1 for Joey Daccord, 1-7-0 for Philip Grubauer. And so, again, I don't put all of that on Philip, but also his last start wasn't great. But both of these teams just a hair under 900 on the save percentage overall as a unit. And so when you have goaltenders that are able to do a serviceable job, you want to see the teams be able to give them goal support. That has not always been the case for the Seattle Kraken, even though they are coming off of a win coming into Thursday's game with a big win against the Carolina Hurricanes. But that hasn't always been the case. And, I think for us, what that's looked like is just a team that on paper has a lot of promise. We did have Vince Dunn, who was not able to start the year. We did have, unfortunately, our captain, second ever captain, Jordan Everly, is out for a minimum of 3 months after having pelvic surgery. That sounds very not great and inconvenient, just as backs, hips and all of that are pretty important as well, Gil. So we're dealing with a little bit of that. One game is not what I consider consistent. So who knows what version of Seattle we will get on Thursday. But, before we head into some of the goods and the not so goods of each of these teams in a little more detail, how would you summarize where the Islanders are, Gil, as we are on the other side now of the U.S. Thanksgiving holiday?
I think they're kind of clinging right now to hope. And, with all the injuries that they've had, it's been hard. And, you're missing 2/3 of your top line. At one point, 3 of your 6 defensemen out of the lineup. Now there's still 2 missing. That takes a toll on a very talented and deep team. The Islanders are not deep and lacked scoring punch even when everybody was healthy. So they've been losing a lot in overtime and in shootouts. They lead the league in loser points right now. But when you're dealing with that many injuries and that significant injury list, you kind of hope to hang close, tread water until you get everybody healthy, and then hope for better. So I think that's sort of where it's been at. How about with the Kraken?
Yeah, I think, our situation is a little different. What you described is what Seattle experienced last year.
Right.
I don't think that was as skilled of a team on paper or otherwise. And that really left me scratching my head a lot on what happened in the offseason leading up to our season 3. In season 4, of course, we made huge splashes on the first day of free agency, getting Brandon Montour, getting Chandler Stevenson. Montour has been fantastic, especially with the absence of Vince Dunn. And we've been talking about with Vince now back, who's the number one, kind of offensive defender. I think they're kind of jockeying a little bit of healthy question mark competition.
Good problem to have, though, if you have two guys fighting for that spot.
Exactly, which we've never seen before. So we'll take it. And what we also have never seen before is two defensemen on our power play because we need it. It's not a great power play. But this year it was a different story. And, I think what has been interesting, and I think sometimes it can be controversial if we as media and even fan bases allow it to be, is that Dan Bilesma has not been afraid to utilize his healthy scratches for players of the caliber of Oliver Bjorkstrand, who was our all-star last year, and just most recently, Andre Burakovsky, who for the last few seasons, even despite his injuries, Gil, you and I have talked about this on the Locked On NHL show, he was our offensive promise, but it just never came to be. And that's what it sounds like is maybe happening with the Islanders. But I want to take you back and just ask explicitly, like, what is your take on what the Islanders did in the offseason to help with this lineup? Did they do enough? Was it not? What was going on? Is it just the Duclair injury? What's your take on this again, now that we're on the other side of Thanksgiving?
Yeah, my take hasn't changed since the offseason. What Lou Lamoriello did was he used the limited amount of money he had available efficiently. Anthony Duclair, solid, in my mind, ideally a second line guy, but he's on the first line with the Islanders, but a veteran who can contribute offensively, who can hopefully give the team a boost once he returns to the lineup. Added Maxim Siplikov from Russia. He was a 30-goal scorer in the KHL. He has 3 goals so far this year, but he's played well for the most part. A good addition, only $1 million a year against the cap on a 1-year deal. What he didn't do, though, was add some cap space so he could actually retool this lineup. The Islanders have not won a playoff series in the last 3 years. They have an aging team. They have one of the lowest ranked prospect pools in the NHL, according to The Athletic, according to TSN, according to almost everybody. What Lou does is he keeps doubling down on an aging core that hasn't won a playoff series in 3 years, hoping to squeak into the playoffs, get hot at the right time, win 4 series that you're not favored to win any of, and win a Stanley Cup, as opposed to saying, we got too many guys on the wrong side of 30. We need to get younger, faster, and more skilled. This core maxed out 4 years ago when we made the conference final. Let's retool a little bit and take a step back to take 2 or 3 steps forward. So as a result, we're stuck in the muddy middle with not a lot of cap space, a lot of older guys on bad contracts, and a future that it looks like it's going to get worse before it gets better.
Yeah, that's really interesting. And again, not the complete story of Seattle, at least not right now, but certainly similar enough. And that's how I kind of feel about these two teams. I say it a lot on Locked On Kraken, but let's really break this down. What's the good and what's the really not great? And how do we think these two teams can utilize and capitalize on their strengths to attack the weaknesses when it comes to puck drop on Thursday? We'll get into that on this Squadcast episode of Locked On Islanders and Locked On Kraken.
Today's episode is brought to you by your friends at FanDuel. Get ready to tackle the NFL action with FanDuel, America's #1 sportsbook. Because right now, new customers can bet $5 and get $150 in bonus bets if you win that first $5 bet. The FanDuel Sportsbook app gives you everything you need to place live bets on the NFL all in one place. So when you get a hunch in the middle of the game, you can check out the latest stats, view live play-by-play, and so much more, all on the same page where you place your bets. And Kraken fans, Islander fans, you can also use your knowledge of your favorite hockey team and the sport of hockey to place some exciting bets on FanDuel. Check out the latest odds for tonight's game between the Kraken and the Islanders. Just visit FanDuel.com to join today. You'll get started with $150 in bonus bets if you win your first $5 bet. That's FanDuel.com. Never waste a hunch and make every moment more with FanDuel, an official sportsbook partner of the NFL.
We are back here, Erica L. Ayala, joined by Gil Martin, your hosts of Locked on Kraken and Locked on Islanders, respectively, also respectfully. Always want to be respectful. But Gil, let's talk about, if you had to pick, what is the superpower of this Islanders team? Put another way, what are the things, or who are the people that just really are solid? And when the Islanders are playing their best, it's because of these positions or this style of play.
Well, I got to start with Sorokin. I mean, he keeps them in games that very often they have no business staying in. And there's no way they lead the league in overtime and shootout losses without Sorokin keeping them in a lot of these games. And the other thing I would cite, I think, is more than anything, resiliency. This team, they blow a lot of leads, unfortunately, but when they fall behind, they also don't quit. They don't give up. And this is a veteran team that finds a way to fight back and stay in most of the games that they're playing. So their experience and their resiliency, along with the goaltending, I think, has been the superpower, so to speak, as you put it, of the New York Islanders. How about over in Seattle?
Sure. I would start with Joey Daccord, similarly keeping the Seattle Kraken in games when they just can't find the back of the net. The power play has been abysmal. We went on an 0 for 20 stretch until one of our young whippersnappers, Shane Wright, was able to return to the lineup after, as I mentioned, being a healthy scratch a few times. And again, I will say, maybe as a 2.0 to that, I honestly do like the coaching staff. This Dan Bylsma coaching staff is in constant communication with the players, and that even means making some difficult, choices to scratch an Oliver Bjorkstrand, to scratch an Andre Burakovsky, and to give Shane Wright 3 consecutive scratches, not as a punishment, but as an opportunity for him to really settle in. And so I think it's definitely a superpower. I don't think that we've seen the results that we want yet from that coaching staff, but I think that there is trust, there's open communication, and I think that's huge for this team. Now, as I'm sure is the case with the Islanders, we also have our kryptonite. And for me, that is the inconsistency. I love that you talked about the resiliency of the Islanders. And if I'm being honest, Gil, I just haven't seen enough of that. It's not that there aren't guys like Yanni Gourde is always going to give you 100%. Brandon Tanev is just, he's a shot straight out of the cannon and brings a lot of energy. But the consistency has been missing at times. The accountability has been missing from this team. And I think what's also great about this team comparative to other Kraken rosters is that we don't have that veteran. We're not short on veterans. We're not short on a good pipeline system. And we have a nice mix and balance for once in our history, where we're getting the Shane Wrights, the Matty Beniers, the Ty Cartiers, the Riker Evans on the roster alongside Stevenson, alongside Montour, Eberle before he got injured, even a Vince Dunn, Adam Larson. But the mixture and the blend of truly finding an identity has been missing. And that makes it difficult to win games when you don't know who the go-to guy is. Vince Dunn said the other day, we're trying to do each other's jobs. Everyone's trying to do someone else's job instead of maybe focusing on their own. And I think that's led to this, again, kind of cyclone of inconsistency and just below average and below expectation play. For the Islanders, what would you say has been the main, the sore thumb, the thorn in the side for this team?
Got to go with 3 things. Got to start with special teams, 31st on the power play in the league, dead last on the penalty kill. So I don't think there's any team, when you combine those 2 factors, that could be having worse time on special teams than the New York Islanders. Now, the good news is they are last in the league as far as number of penalties taken. No, they don't go to the box very often, but when they are shorthanded, it's a disaster. So special teams have really hurt the Islanders. The second thing I will say is third periods. They are the worst team in the league as far as giving up goals in the third period. I think it's more psychological than anything. I think that they've blown so many leads this year and last year as well, but this year even worse, where as soon as something bad happens, it's like, uh-oh, here we go again. And, like case in point, the other night against Washington, you take a penalty in the first minute of the third period, you're up 2 goals, you give up a power play goal to the Capitals a minute later, and then it's a 1-goal lead, you end up losing the game in overtime. So it's just a snowball effect. They're waiting for something bad to happen now in third periods. And then the third thing I would have to cite is just a lack of overall offense. This team just, even when they're healthy, they didn't score enough. And now with Duclair and Barzal out of the lineup, it's even harder for them to score. So, like last night's game against Montreal is sort of a case in point. You outshoot the Canadiens, but you only score once. And so you lose in overtime 2-1 because you can't finish. You just don't have guys who consistently know how to put the puck in the net. And eventually, you're only getting so many chances in a game. And when you can't take advantage of them, it comes back to bite you.
Deep sigh. I mean, I know that was you, Gil, talking about the Islanders, and it can be easy to, at least at the time of this particular recording, to focus on different things. But a lot of that I think will sound familiar to Kraken fans. And it goes back to, again, the inconsistency and, the ending games has actually not been. It's like we kind of wake up, the smelling salts, they kick in the third period, but the starts, they've been brutal. They've been so brutal for the Kraken. And those are just the frustrating things. Like you said, that psychologically they can get into the head of a team, and it's like, okay, well, this must be who we are because this is always happening. And it sounds like both teams at times having trouble, like really fighting through that to find their true North Star. So coming up on this crossover episode of Locked On Islanders and Locked On Kraken, let's focus on what we want to see from these two teams from our respective sides in our keys to the game. And welcome back to this crossover episode of Locked On Kraken and Locked On Islanders. Gil Martin from your Locked On Islanders show, and of course, one of your hosts of Locked On NHL, joining me, Erica L. Ayala, your host of Locked On Kraken. Our two teams will meet at center ice at UBS Arena on Thursday evening. Well, I should say at least evening on the East Coast. And it will be the last meeting between these two teams. Now, the Seattle Kraken, Gil, were able to get that win at Climate Pledge Arena. It was a close game, a 3-2 win, and it was actually Jamie Alexiak who got the game-winning goal. He had a really good stretch for us and one of our most consistent players, especially looking at game score. We've seen some other players really step up more recently, but I always enjoy and also am really nervous when the Seattle Kraken play the Islanders because, again, in the good that you're talking about, in the bad that you're talking about, I hear what I see from the Kraken. But so, Gil, let's focus on the Islanders first. What are your keys to the game? Or a way I like to remix this is the New York Islanders will defeat the Seattle Kraken on Thursday if.
Okay, number one, got to get good goaltending. And I am not sure. I think it'll be Semyon Varlamov on Thursday. Not 100% sure of that. They haven't confirmed it. But regardless of who plays goalie, you got to get good goaltending because, as we've said, the Islanders are not exactly an offensive juggernaut. So you need good goaltending to stay in the game. Number two, you got to stay out of the penalty box because the penalty kill is terrible. And, I know that the Kraken's power play is a little better than the Islanders, but not much. They're 30th in the league right now. So, yeah, I know. Right? Still better than 31st or 32nd, but yeah. But still want to stay out of the box. And then the other thing is, if you do get a lead going into that third period, you got to be consistent over 60 minutes. This team specializes in playing 40 minutes of good hockey and just falling apart late. You can't let that happen.
Yeah, I think those are all good. And again, the goaltending seems like an obvious one to say for the Seattle Kraken. So I'm actually going to remix it a little bit. So the Seattle Kraken will defeat the New York Islanders for their second consecutive win if the offense shows up. Like you, not exactly sure who we will get in net because the Seattle Kraken are on a road stretch and will play the Devils and the Rangers this weekend. My hunch is that we actually might see Philip Grubauer in this matchup. Talked about him earlier. I don't think it's his year. I don't think it's his time any longer with the Seattle Kraken. So I don't think we can bank on goaltending saving us. So that means the offense has to show up. You mentioned special teams, not something I want to see. Don't want to see a lot of it for the Seattle Kraken, although I do think they need to continue to find success on the power play. I'd rather just stay 5-on-5. So I want to stay out of the penalty box.
So do the Islanders for that matter. But yeah.
But I think, what was interesting in something that you said earlier about this team, especially with some of their injuries, is that this is not a particularly quick team. They're not necessarily quick on their skates, known for their skating prowess, if you will. And that's where the Seattle Kraken have or potentially can tap into something that they said they wanted to be, that they haven't been consistently, and that's a fast team. But when people say they want to play fast, I don't think people realize that means that you have to win 50-50 battles. You have to be defensively sound. You have to be able to anticipate, not just on the defensive side, of course, to win the puck back, but also you have to know where your teammates are. So again, if the offense can do some of those things with more consistency than they have ever done throughout this season, maybe with the exception being the most recent game against Carolina, that's what it's going to take to defeat, anyone the Seattle Kraken are playing. But again, with the Islanders in particular, I think this gives the Kraken an opportunity to do what they say they want to do, which is to play fast. So with what you said about the Isles, again, Sorokin seems to be an obvious choice as far as a player to watch. But Gil, is there maybe an X factor, someone who maybe isn't getting a lot of shine or hasn't necessarily had a consistent game that you think if they really tap in against the Kraken, that it will lead to success for the Islanders?
Yeah, I would have to go with Noah Dobson. His offense, last year he scored 70 points as a defenseman. This year he is on pace for less than half of that. Offensively, he has been a little off. Defensively, he has regressed and been a real problem and a liability. If Dobson can return to the form he had of a year ago, the offense gets better. The defense makes fewer mistakes. I think that would be a big step forward for the Islanders. How about for the Kraken?
Yeah, this is an interesting one. There's a part of me that wants to say Andre Burakovsky because we've seen success when, again, Bylsma has put someone up in the rafters, made them a healthy scratch, and them coming back to the lineup and having a prove-it game. That being said, I really think that the Seattle Kraken, they want to see a little bit more out of Ryan Winterton, who has come up from the AHL because of some of the injuries that we've had. Riker Evans right now is out of the lineup, but that doesn't open a spot for Andre Burakovsky because Berkey is a forward, Riker Evans is a defenseman. So I really want to see, there's two lines. And I'm going to cheat a little here. The right line has been our most consistent line. I really like Shane Wright centering Ellie Tolvanen and Oliver Bjorkstrand. This is not an X factor person, but a line. I want Bylsma to leave that line alone. Keep them together. Just keep them together. So I took a little bit of liberties since I'm driving the car today. But as far as an X factor, I really do think that Matty Beniers has potential to be an X factor here. We saw that because of the line shift and Andre Burakovsky coming out of the lineup, that Yanni Gourde was on wing with Jaden Schwartz and Matty Beniers again at that center spot. And Matty Beniers, just after practice, he was the most light and jovial we've seen him all season. And we've talked about this on Locked On Kraken. I don't know whether it's the pressure of his contract extension, which took some time, Gil, in the offseason to get done. Maybe it is this change, but him knowing that he would have Yanni Gourde on his line, someone who has played center for us for the Seattle Kraken, just seemed to really open up Matty Beniers this year as far as him just being more talkative, being more fun, to speak to. And so if that can translate and open up his offense, I think that's huge for us. So Matty Beniers and by extension, his line, who got us started 19 seconds into the game against the Carolina Hurricanes, I'm really looking for them. But again, Dan Bylsma, do not touch that right line. Leave him alone, buddy. Leave him alone. Well, we will see if any of our predictions and expectations for our respective teams come to fruition as our two teams take on and face off, I should say, at UBS Arena. I've never been to UBS for an NHL game. I've been to some PWHL games there. So hopefully I'll make that happen sometime soon. But Gil, let the folks know where they can find you and, of course, Locked On Islanders.
You could find me on social media at Ice Wars NYR VSNYI. And you could find the show at Locked On Isles on X and pretty much on YouTube or wherever you listen to podcasts. And always a pleasure doing a crossover with you, Erica.
Absolutely. And for those Locked On Islanders fans, you can find Locked On Kraken, all the places you find Locked On Islanders. As part of the Locked On Podcast Network, you can find us on the SiriusXM app. You can find us, of course, on YouTube, where this show will live, as well as anywhere you find your audio podcasts. And you can find the show. Mostly we just use our YouTube channel these days to communicate. And you can find me personally on Blue Sky or Twitter/X at Erica _L_Ayala on Twitter, and then just at eLindsay on Blue Sky and basically everywhere else. Elon Musk, you will pay for your crimes for taking away my eLindsay hashtag or handle, I should say. Anyway, thanks as always for making Locked On Islanders and Locked On Kraken a part of your daily destination and making us your first and or second listen of the day. Now go check out Locked On Fantasy Hockey. Become a fantasy hockey expert and get the edge over your league mates with daily tips from Steal and Flip. Find Locked On Fantasy Hockey on YouTube or wherever you listen to podcasts. And if you're listening to this on game day, well, we hope you enjoy the game wherever you may be watching. And at least for your sake, whoever you are, listener, whoever you're rooting for, we hope your favorite player, if not your favorite team, does all that and more. But for Gil Martin, I'm Erica L. Ayala. Thank you, as always, for making the Locked On Podcast Network and especially the Locked On NHL shows a part of your daily destination. And we'll catch you on our next episodes.
Thanks again to Erica L. Ayala of Locked On Kraken for doing this special crossover episode of Locked On Islanders and Locked On Kraken. Everydayers, we will be back tomorrow as we have our key takeaways from tonight's game against Seattle, and we preview both of this weekend's big games, Saturday against the Carolina Hurricanes and Sunday against the Ottawa Senators. Both of those games, 5 o'clock Eastern time starts. So make sure you join us for that. Until then, have a great day, everybody. Stay safe. And of course, let's go Islanders.